Welcome to Talent Takeover,
Unfiltered.
When it comes to working hard and keeping it real, we know our shit. Self-care, happiness, inner peace, and time. I'm Brianna Rooney, and this is Taylor Bradley.
Hey, y'all.
And we have thrived in chaos and turned it into an art form. So Taylor, what are we doing here today?
We're here to give you a raw, under-the-hood view of all things recruiting and finally give credit where credit is due to a long underrated industry that's full of quote-unquote experts.
All right. Well, then let's take this show to the road. Hey, Talent Takeover Unfiltered lovers.
Starting with the Sammy.
Oh, Sammy. We are so close to our 100th episode, and we were just like chatting it up, and we're freaking out about it because we got some cool shit coming up. So, Taylor, what's going on?
Oh, just, living through this tornado, which we were actually, I was going to say not laughing about, but I'm recording. We're under a tornado warning. Well, people are like, what's funny about a tornado? Well, it's not the tornadoes, but it's just that I'm caring about my day. Because if you live in Texas, this is very normal for us to have tornadoes every now and then. I feel like it's like once a month at least. But yeah, when the sirens go off, that's when I know I need to go downstairs and get in the bathtub.
Okay, in the bathtub. Okay, that's its own separate thing. So for you listeners, if you are watching on the YouTube Millionaire Recruiter channel, and all of a sudden Taylor's not there, this is what happened. She's been blown away. So what are we talking about? Oh yeah, we're going to talk about coaching your candidates to an offer, which I actually find whenever I hear the offer word, I always get the money chills. I get super excited about it still.
Yeah. Well, whenever you first talked to me about this episode and wanting to do this, I was like, coaching your candidates to an offer. It's like, I don't know. I just think about the offers that I've received, and most of them, I'm excited about it. So I don't really need to be talked too much into it. But there's definitely been situations. There's been 2 times in my life where I had competing offers. And that's where it's like, I think that's where this topic comes into play, right? Is talking your candidates into the offer, like your offer versus the competing offer or the counter offer from the current company to stay, which actually does happen a lot.
I was actually thinking more of as getting them trained to get the offer, because there's so much interview prep that comes into actually landing that offer. So yeah, I want to do all sides. I think that's the fun part.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing, or I just did a webinar on how a recruiter can be your ally. And so I think this kind of goes hand in hand. So anyone that is in their job search, please use their recruiter because they can coach you on how to really land that offer. Because we're talking to hiring managers all the time, and they're the ones that are telling us very candidly why people are not getting the offer. That's what I don't think people understand. People don't understand we have access to that information.
Yeah, I think it's because they don't always get that information,
I like it. Okay.
There's a lot of
asking the right questions.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of, if you think about from a candidate perspective, there's a lot of situations where a candidate isn't even given that information. They're just I've seen it happen. It's okay. This is a horrible non-best practice. This is not something that companies should be doing, but it shouldn't be that you get to a point where you've gone through panel interviews. You've actually sat down in person or virtually like this, and you've had an interview, whether it was 1 or 5, and then you just get an email rejection saying we went in another direction or we went with another candidate, and it's no context as to why. And I've seen it happen. It's happened to me before, and it's just wait, you get all the way through a process, you think to the ending stages of a process, and then they just send you that generic email with not any specifics as to why you didn't get the offer or move forward in the process. And I think that obviously does the candidate a disservice, but I think that goes back to what we've talked about in prior episodes, people wanting to avoid confrontation. And not everybody can handle feedback, So I think recruiters or human beings in general, tend to want to avoid confrontation. And so I think if they feel like it's going to be confrontational, where the hiring manager says, this person didn't have X, Y, Z, and the candidate's wait, yes, I do. I have, they just don't want to get themselves into that situation. Now, again, I think it's a cop-out. I think you need to have a conversation with that candidate. You owe it to that candidate, but it does actually happen all the time, unfortunately.
I actually think what would be interesting is to see a chart, and I almost want to make one, but you know me with admin work, but it's to see a chart and say, hey, a candidate spent X amount of time with you. That's how much X amount of feedback they get. Or you like tell that's how much time you put into it. So like, for example, candidate just sends in their resume. You didn't even talk to them. Great. They get a like very generic email, right? The second one is the candidate had a phone screen with the recruiter maybe. And then the hiring manager's like, no, what are you thinking? Or the recruiter is like, no, this didn't work out. Okay, great. That's like a little more feedback or a little more of a attention to them letting them down. I guess that's what it would be. But yeah, if you've gone through all of it, the whole gap, you've gone to the last round and you're not getting feedback, like, God, and that's a generic email, that's rough.
Yeah. Well, and I actually, like, based on more recent experiences, I actually want to put this disclaimer out there because I used to be one of those people that was like, oh, we have access to the information, just like you were saying. Like, as a recruiter, we know that information. We know why candidates not being considered or why they're not moving forward. But I don't think you always know. Like, I've lived in a world recently where I'm like, that's exactly why recruiters have this stereotype or that stereotype, because it's not at any fault of their own, right? Like, they're just put in a position sometimes where they don't have the information. And it's not, I would say not even recently. It's happened to me historically too, where there have been times that a hiring manager has opted to not move forward with somebody and I don't get context as to why. Think about that. Like, you're trying to track hiring managers down sometimes to get feedback on your candidates. Like, not all hiring managers are created equal. They're not all super responsive. And so I think you do get those sometimes where they're like, not interested, but that's all you're going to get from them. And you don't get context why. So you're not giving it to the candidate because you don't have it, not because you don't want to.
Yeah, that's rough. So how do we coach them to get that offer? So like, can you think of an example where like just candidate experience really strong? Like it seemed like the person really wanted to get this job. I mean, I feel like everyone wants to get the job, but not a lot of candidates seek out to get the job. A lot of them, like, a good example. This candidate the other day, I have 3 questions that the hiring manager wants answers to, right? Before I even set up that call. So I said, hey, I need these three answers. His response to me was, that's on my resume. Oh, and then he goes,
like you do.
Yeah. He goes, can you please move this along? Like, I want to accept as soon as possible. And I'm like, so my response was, you don't get to the front of the line without answering these 3 questions. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And by the way, one of the questions was, why are you interested? So that's not on your resume. You know,
Yeah.
It's so like his response was like such a fuck you that I'm like, I don't even think I want to send you over. You know, like, do you understand? Like I'm a gatekeeper. I'm the bouncer to this club. Like, you're not getting that?
Yeah. And you also don't want the credit for a bad hire. So it's like,
Totally.
if you see any kind of red flags in the process at all with the candidate, it is literally the recruiter's job to be like, hey, no. Even if the hiring manager loves the candidate, even if it's going to take you longer to fill that job now because of it, that is literally a part of your job to be like, okay, wait, the red flags are starting to pop up. This is not, you're supposed to point that out. But one of the biggest things that I would say that I've seen so much recently, and I'm actually shocked by this every time, and I don't know why I'm so shocked by it, but it's pretty standard to like do your research, right, on a company. Coaching it, talk back to your question of coaching a candidate to an offer. It's pretty standard to do your research on a company. I am so just like shocked lately with people that don't do that. They don't do research on the company, on the founder, on the CEO, on the principal, on the product. If it's a, company, like that's another one. Like, okay, have you tried the product? Have you used the product? If you're going to be in a sales role selling a certain product and you've not even tried that product, huge mistake. Like that's something that you're going to need to do. I don't care what product it is, but you're going to get asked about your thoughts on that product. So you need to have tried it, especially if you're going to be selling it. So there's just stuff like that I'm just like, I'm so surprised that people or they do the most basic level of research of like, go look at the company, look at their mission statement. That's it. But really, really digging in there and like understanding, what is the principal's story or what is the CEO's story? Or if it's a startup, what made them found the company, just really understanding. And you would be a great example of this. Like, there's so much information out there about you, like out that exists in the world. You're constantly talking about yourself.
Thank you.
Just fucking with you.
Check me out.
Wait. Exactly. But so like if somebody came to you for anything and was like, really trying to court you, whether that was for speaking, whatever it was, and they knew nothing about you, would you not be like, didn't do any kind of homework at all? There's so much information about me out there. Or if somebody did on the flip side of that, wouldn't you be really, really impressed if they knew that like you started your business, with techies and when you sold it to a firm. And like, if they knew all these very specific details about you that you have spoken publicly about, wouldn't that be more impressive to you?
Absolutely. And you know what's really funny, and I know we're going off subject a little bit, but the other day, this company wants to put my course on their site. I'm like, okay, cool. Like more visibility sounds great to me, right?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about starting your own recruiting agency? Still trying to figure out where to begin? You are not alone. Many aspiring agency owners are intimidated by the unknowns, the complexities of the recruitment industry, to the point that they don't even start. They let their dream fizzle out. Womp, womp, womp. While watching others succeed. So the freedom to be their own boss and not have their potential earning capped slipped right through their fingers. But what if I told you there's a way to turn that overwhelming challenge into your biggest opportunity? That's exactly why I created the Start Your Own Recruiting Agency Crash Course. This shouldn't be a secret that I keep. As a serial entrepreneur in the tech recruiting space, I have over 15 years of experience in building, scaling, and successfully exiting recruiting companies. This comprehensive bootcamp is designed to guide you through every step of launching and growing a successful recruiting agency. I wish I had this course when I first started. That was hard. It could have saved me so many headaches, so many costly mistakes. And this course covers everything from creating your business blueprint to mastering sourcing techniques and delivering best-in-class candidate experience. Imagine having over 7 hours of video instruction, 30 plus downloadable resources. All of these are designed to propel you towards achieving that 6 to 7 figure milestone. This is what I'm offering to you. Let's tackle these challenges head on. Enroll in starting your own recruiting agency today and take that first step towards building the career and life you've always wanted.
On the phone with them, and they're like, okay, can you tell me like a little bit more about like how many people have taken this course you're following? I'm like, well, my biggest following's on YouTube. And they're like, you have a YouTube? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, how did you find me in the first place then? Like, now I'm confused.
Oh my God.
So, like, and it wasn't, I don't even think I was insulted, actually. It was more like, you're that big of an idiot. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's like an example to me of maybe somebody that got tasked with reaching out to you because somebody else like had done their research and was like, we need Brianna. And someone got tasked with reaching out to you, but it's like, okay, but you're still, just like from a recruiter perspective, you're still representing that company. You're still representing that person. You have to do your homework. You have to know the information. You have to, it's same thing with like, I think it's really rude on the other flip side of this. I think it's really rude whenever hiring managers and recruiters at that, like, don't know anything about the candidate and they're asking them things that are right there on the resume. Like, where do you live? Where did you go to school? Like, it's the thing, it's like, did you look at all, their resume at all? So yeah, I think doing your homework is really important. It's very, very basic. And it's something that's been around and existed as feedback and a tip for literally decades. But I'm just amazed at, with the internet, ChatGPT, the information that's at our fingertips, how much people actually don't do their homework and don't research and then still feel like entitled to the job.
Yeah, 100%. So a good example here as coaching candidates is I'm trying to get as much bad feedback as possible, like throughout. Like, so like, let's just say I'm coming into the search, and normally because I'm contingency, I come into the search at like when they're desperate, right? It's like they've already tried all this shit. I'm coming in, hopefully saving the day. And so they're generally going to have tons of bad feedback. So I'm going to say like, all right, why has no one gotten an offer? Or why has the offers been declined? So I'm trying to find all of the bad stuff, so I can relay to the candidates in hopes that they're going to be the one to pass. Because you got to think like, if you're super prepared on all the shit that people did wrong, like you should be able to really like step up to play,
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm not going to make that same mistake. Good example of this is for whatever, they're looking for a staff level engineer. So like tippity top individual contributors. And they're like, look, we just need people to be able to see a problem, go solve it, and not come like talk to me. Like there's no hand holding at stuff.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we do this challenge and everyone fails. They either undersolve it, so they didn't put any thought into it, or they oversolve it like it's this big to do and now we're going to spend weeks solving something that should have only taken a day. So, completely polar opposites as to why they're failing, And like, I'm kind of looking at that as it almost feels a little ambiguous to me.
Yeah.
But when I relay it to engineers, they're like, oh, totally get that. Like, they're very much like, got it. I'm like, oh, cool. So you're speaking that speak. But that's what's going to prepare them. Another thing is they hate, they're in the AI space. They hate when they're like, hey, why are you interested? Oh, I really like AI. He goes, I swear to God, if someone else tells me that exact sentence, I'm going to hang up on him. Like, that's how furious he is about this. And so I actually have to say, hey, besides you're into AI, why do you want to talk to this company?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So it's like, I think it comes to like depth. So when coaching your candidates, everyone, give them context, like hardcore context. And what I like to do is like, let's just say I have someone in the interview process that, I don't know, has like tangents, talking about myself, someone that tangents. Okay. Yeah. So what I'll do, instead of saying, hey, a hiring manager says you tangent too much, I might say, hey, they just had a candidate, it's a little passive aggressive, but they just had a candidate last week that they actually passed on them because the person tangent too much. They need people to talk directly to the point. Now, and I want to hear your opinion on this one. In my opinion, I don't tell them that's their problem because I don't want them to start crashing down confidence failing and give anxiety. So I like to tell them someone else did this and that's why they didn't get the job. So they can maybe internally be like, okay, how am I going to do this? And then I can even say, hey, do you think you tangent? Do you need any help with your communication? You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. What
Yeah. No, I love that. And I have actually been in that situation a lot. I feel like in the last 6 months where I have had to explain to people, like, you've got to just be brief. And I feel like that's really hard in an interview because everybody wants to say everything. Like, they want to get it all out there. Like the example that I provided earlier, where it's like, you were being considered because, or no longer being considered because you don't have XYZ experience. And the candidate's like, well, I actually do, but they didn't get to speak about it. And so I think a lot of times it's like, word vomit. They're just trying to get it all out, like trying to get everything and make sure I hit on boom, 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 like everything that was said in the job description. Let me make sure I speak about it because I know that that's what they want. And I feel like oftentimes it could be information overload, exactly like what you're talking about. But I like to set the expectation. If I'm dealing with a hiring manager that is very much like, you've got to be to the point, I like to set that expectation when I prep my candidates for the interview. I'm like, I don't even tell them like, so-and-so did this or another candidate did this and they didn't get the offer. I'm like, and even if that person doesn't, they're not long-winded, they're brief. I still like to give them like, this is how I kind of like this hiring manager's playbook. These are what you need to know about them going into an interview with them. And so it's like, if they like concise answers, short answers to the point, then I definitely think, and I've had to do that before, a lot actually recently, where I've had to be like, you're going to lose our principal if you don't do XYZ, if you don't, you're not brief to the point. And I've seen a lot of candidates. This is the other thing to that is like, I've seen a lot of candidates in these interviews, and this has been historically too. Like, I've just seen this happen a lot since virtual interviewing's been a thing, right? Where people can't read the room, even virtually. Like, you can't see the light draining out of the hiring manager's eyes, the disengagement, the like, looking at everything else, but it's like, you have to be able to read the room and know when you're just like talking too much. And you're one of those that I can definitely tell when that's happening to you. We like laugh about that. I'm like, I'd be messaging them like, I can tell they're losing you. If it's something that's too long-winded, you're just like, and so I think that's another thing that I coach people on, candidates on, even if it's not, specific to that hiring manager. I'm like, make sure to be concise in your answers, because honestly, who likes to listen to somebody that's really long-winded?
I mean, that's solid.
I guess anybody that listens to our podcast likes to listen to people that are long. But, like, I just think it's one of those things, like, just get to the point, or like know what you're going to say. And I have done this too. I have prepped candidates for, and so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I have prepped candidates for the types of things that they'll need to be prepared to discuss. So I never give interview questions. I never say like, this is exactly what we're going to ask you. But if they say something amazing in their interview or their screen with me, that's like really powerful, and it's something like you've implemented, this ERP system, and we're going through that right now, and I know that's like a hot topic or whatever, I make sure if they tell me that in the interview, I'm like, oh, make sure you speak about that in other interviews. That's really, really good information. I also notate it for myself, and then I provide them little notes after, like, here's some things to make sure if they advance forward, like, make sure you talk about this, make sure you're brief, whatever. So I think coaching your candidates is like something every recruiter should be doing. I don't think a candidate should go into an interview with a panel or a hiring manager and not sort of get like a lay of the land from the recruiter.
Yeah, like the insider scoop. Like,
Yeah.
tell me the tea. Like, what's going on? Let's think about biases.
Yeah.
So I know we're all trained and I have biases. Here's the bottom line. We're human. So there's the thing, right? So you should know what your hiring manager's biases are. You should know, their halo effect. Ooh, if you do this, they're going to really love you, and I think that that's the stuff that we have to tell people. That's how you coach them to an offer. Like, always think about, like, why did someone get hired in this role before? Why did the hiring manager say no? Why did, it's like, what is going on? What are the problems? And as recruiters, that is your job. Like that, in my opinion, if I was going to pick one thing, if I'm a job seeker, why am I going to work with a recruiter? That's why. It's because you've got the inside scoop.
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth. Like, you're supposed to help me get my foot in the door. You're supposed to help me get a leg up over the competition, and set myself apart from everybody else. And I do think that that's recruiters, yes, they can be really busy. I know people love to say that recruiters ghost people. I know that's a theme. It absolutely does happen. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. It does happen. I can say I'm guilty. I've done it before. And the reasons in which I've done it, I will say, which is what has changed my perspective, is because it's been completely outside of my control. Like, I can only tell somebody so many times I don't have the feedback. And if I still don't have it, because y'all, there are hiring managers that take months to make decisions or change their mind on what they want, or then they'll circle back, change their mind from what they originally wanted. And so we have to go down a different profile, look for a different profile. And then they come back to this. Like, there's a million scenarios that I've been in like that, where I'm just like, I never thought I'd be the recruiter that has to ghost people, but I don't have an answer for you. I don't have feedback for you. Or this role just stays open and candidates fall to the wayside. Like, it absolutely does happen. And I promise you, it's not because the recruiter wants to. They would like to close the loop with you. They would like to move on. But I've had that happen where it's like, we initially start the search thinking we want this profile. Then the hiring manager changes his mind and thinks he wants this, but wants to still leave this rec open. And so you go and you're looking for this other thing, but you're trying to keep these candidates over here warm, and then sometimes come back to them. Sometimes recruiters are put in impossible situations. Like, by impossible, I mean just really hard to make everybody happy. And, on a human level, we understand and try to give as much feedback as we can. But I also feel like sometimes full disclosure for our listeners, wasn't always met with the same, I guess, level of empathy that I was trying to provide candidates, which is like, I'm so sorry, I still don't have an update for you, by like checking in once a week, letting them know, like, I still don't have an update for you, but I just wanted to circle back and let you know that. I promise I'll let you know as soon as I have some feedback. And then, get met with attitude sometimes in response to that. And it's like, it's not the recruiter's fault if they don't have feedback, and they're not trying to bullshit you, and they're not trying to string you along, and communicating with you is a courtesy. But when they get attitude back, or somebody gives them shit back, that's what makes recruiters go the route in which this conversation started, of wanting to be non-confrontational and therefore just ghosting or sending a generic message,
Right. So I think what you're doing, though, isn't actually ghosting. You're just saying, like, look, I don't have any feedback. But then obviously it gets to the point where you're like, well,
and then
right?
and then it became ghosting, because like, I just don't have any feedback. Or if you send me a really shitty message back to me saying I don't have any feedback for you, and I get like met with all of this attitude and how unprofessional it is that we don't have feedback, like whatever, then
I've not understood anger back. It's like, especially if you want something.
Yeah.
You want something. Are you good? Like, you want a popsicle. Are you going to come like step on my foot to go get my popsicle? No, I'm going to eat the popsicle right in front of you. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, and it's like the guy that you mentioned that didn't want to answer the questions. It's like, what purpose does that serve you? What purpose does having attitude or being angry, like, where does that get you in this process of wanting this job? Where does acting like that, or having those sort of emotions, or taking it out, like, how do you think that's going to get you ahead of everybody? Nobody's going to be like, I hired that guy or that girl because she was the most pissed off person in the process.
Yeah, maybe that works when you're dating, right? It's like, well, I'm going to go tame that asshole.
Yeah, there's that.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. I think another thing, because I know we're getting close to time here, is how you can really coach your candidates to an offer is even by the questions they ask. So I think that there's those, first of all, we all have to ask questions, but you always know, like, hey, you asked this question. Like, there's also buying signals, because hiring managers, especially lately with this weird market we're in, they do not want to waste any time on candidates that aren't genuinely interested, because there is this huge spray and pray method with job searches right now, right? It's like, I'm going to send my resume to anyone and everyone. Going back to your point, like, no one's researching the company right now because they're probably talking to like 600 companies, or they just don't even care, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, give them buying signals. Like, let them know you're interested. Tell them why. Like, let them, like on the other side, when I'm coaching like a candidate for a close, I'm like, hey, close your eyes, visualize you sitting, in the office with them if they're in office. Visualize that that's your manager, and how's that relationship going to go? Like, I kind of go deep level like that. But on the other side, they have to still do that to the interview team, because like that's the same thing. It's like the choose me. I don't know why I'm thinking of Red Rover. Do you ever play that game as a kid, Red Rover?
Yeah.
I love that game.
Yeah. I would play that game with the kids when you were Dallas. I fucking love that game.
What's funny is I ended up getting banned from school. I guess it was too violent.
Okay, like the clothesline. It's like a mini clothesline. Yeah, that game was so fun. I'm like, I am surprised, but I'm not that it got banned. That's
anyway. So I'm just like thinking, I don't even know what I was thinking, but like, Red Rover said, it's whatever, right over, and it's like, they have to want you on their team.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think people totally grasp that too.
Yeah.
Personality wise, communication wise, like, how we're talking about soft skills all the time. It's because it's like, look, I can put my head down and not talk to you and let you do your job, but that's not what happens anymore. Like, we have to talk to each other. We have to have teamwork. I have to actually like you. But that's what's funny is I remember always, oh, you don't have to like who you work with. Well, kind of, right? Like, I don't have to want to go hang out with them, but I have to have some kind of like for them, right? I mean, I know that they want to work there.
We've all worked with people we didn't like. Let's be honest. Everybody has worked with at least one person that you don't like. And it's actually like, because we spend so much time with our coworkers, and whether that's virtually or in person, you're still like on the phone. You're with these people a lot, like more than your family. I think it's really, you want to like the people that you work with. Like, it's miserable when you don't like the people that you work with.
Right. So that's another thing I think to coach candidates on, which I think gets missed a lot. It gets missed, like, like just personality.
Yeah.
Like we were talking earlier how it's like you listen to podcasts sometimes because you just want to like laugh hysterically, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Those are those personalities where it's like, hey, can you imagine someone coming in, keeping it super light, maybe even having like a whatever joke, and you're like, wow, that's a lasting, lasting thing. This person loves us. Let's win. Like those are the people that, like, I mean, I've hired people on the spot before. Like those are the people like you want to just be like, yes, hug it. I'm going to koala this person for sure. And that's how you coach your candidates. You coach your candidates at all different aspects.
Yeah. And we're coming up on time. So the bro boss tip that I had for our listeners, which is in line with everything that you and I have been talking about, but is as the candidate, ask questions and ask for the feedback. Because what that does is, in the scenario that I outlined earlier where, somebody could feel uncomfortable, the recruiter can feel uncomfortable getting the feedback because they don't like confrontation and can view it as confrontational. Like, you're opening yourself up and you're saying, I want the feedback. And, I love to do it. Like, I love when candidates do that via phone or video or whatever, but not just in an email, which email's great if we don't connect again. But I love when, at the end of the interview, a candidate asks me, is there any, red flags about my resume or my background or anything where you think that I wouldn't get the job or wouldn't be considered, or anything I need to sharpen up my skills on, or just when they open the door and, when you're starting that in conversation one, and you're opening the door and saying, I want feedback, and the person, this is why I like it to be virtual or over the phone. When the person gives you feedback, you're like, okay, that's fair. Okay, I'll research this or whatever. And they can see how you receive the feedback. It helps your candidacy just as far as like, okay, this person's great. They could take constructive criticism, like noted, but also self-aware. Yeah, it's so many things, but it's also like helps you as the candidate. You're getting the information you need to do better in the interview process and advance forward. It is never a bad thing to ask for feedback at the end of an interview of like, is there anything in my background where you think I wouldn't be a good fit, or anything that I should speak further about or elaborate further about in the upcoming interviews? Yeah, like you ask those questions, and I swear to you, like there have absolutely been moments where I'm like, okay, I wasn't going to give this candidate this feedback right now, but when they ask me for it, it's like, okay. And then you give them the feedback and see how they handle it. And I can tell you this, like I've never had somebody ask me for the feedback and then get defensive when I give it to them,
So yeah, that's a really good point. And also I think to note from candidates and recruiters' sides is if they don't get this job, you are helping them with get another job.
Yep.
You know, so I think that is like massive. And recruiters, please stand tall on this, you know? And I like how you said like either on the phone or video, because what does happen, I don't know if every candidate knows this, is some companies cannot give feedback. Like we are literally told, I'm going to give you the feedback, but you're not supposed to tell the candidate. So it's like, you can't have a paper trail of that shit.
Yeah.
Like you can't do that. You'll get in trouble for it. But, you know, maybe on the phone, you want to help them out. You want to give them a little something, you know? So
Yeah. Well, and it also just, I don't think things land the same way in text, you know, like in writing. And so I think it's like you could give someone the feedback that in writing would seem like you're being a huge bitch. But it's like, if you deliver it in a way, again, you can tell sentiment when somebody is speaking to you. So that's why I say it's very big for me that it is done, you know, via video like this, or it's done via phone, because I think you get so much out of it on both sides. You get to see how the candidate responds to constructive criticism, see if they get defensive, see if they're like, okay, well, I did do that here, but I'm going to make sure to expand upon that in my next interviews. You know, like you get so much out of it on both sides. So you're really doing yourself a huge disservice, candidates, if you are not asking for feedback after your first interview with a recruiter.
Mm-hmm. I got to touch on two things. You know, I always do this, but you said sentiment. And I know we're always talking about, is AI going to replace us? No.
Yeah.
They don't have sentiment.
Yeah.
Like that, like it's that right there that I think is just like massive. You just like brought that all together. Go you. All right. This is awesome. Another great episode. And we are almost to our 100th. And I'm telling you, listeners, you are going to want to tune in. You're going to want to share this all over the place for our 100th episode, because we got something big.
Big announcement coming up.
See you soon.
Thanks, y'all.